Hello, everyone. Elisa Marie here. Welcome to Elisa Marie Designs. Welcome back if you're back, and welcome if you're just joining us for Gaslight. Before we begin chapter 16, I want to take a quiet moment to acknowledge how far we've come together in this story. Over the last several chapters, we've watched Patrick Hamilton slowly reveal the psychological trap that Bella has been living in. What began as confusion and self-doubt has gradually exposed something much darker: control, manipulation, and the careful erosion of someone's confidence and in their own reality. As I was preparing to read this chapter tonight, something caught my eye on the page and I read it really quick. And I want to mention before we continue, this chapter contains a moment of physical assault. And because many of you have shared deeply personal reflections while listening to this series, I want to say something important. If at any point this chapter becomes uncomfortable or emotionally difficult to listen to, please feel free to step away. There is absolutely nothing wrong with taking care of yourself first. Stories like Gaslight can sometimes bring up very real experiences for people. If you or someone you know is living in a situation where there is abuse or control, please remember that help and support are available, and your safety and well-being are always the most important thing. Your life is your highest value. Your life, your peace, and your dignity are incredibly valuable. With that said, Hamilton wrote this story to reveal how manipulation works and how truth eventually finds its way to the surface. So, with that said, let's continue together with chapter 16 of Gaslight. As always, settle in with your craft, take a breath, and we will begin. Mr. Manningham did not come in promptly at noon, though Bella had no means of knowing that at the time. He had been unavoidably delayed, he explained, by whom he did not say, but by what Bella could smell from the odor of porter which came to her as he sat upon the bed. He took her hands. Bella had not been able to sleep after the discovery that the brooch was missing. Her fears, which had been somewhat allayed by Jack's gentleness, returned, the stronger for not being able to decide with any certainty what she must fear. Was Jack's new manner a change of heart, or heartless thought only a tactic? Was this disappearance of the brooch a genuine lapse, some monstrous trick played by her own brain? Or was it done by her husband? These were questions which would have been hard enough for Bella to answer in a state of tranquility. In her confusion, they were impossible. She hoped that she looked as ill as she felt, keeping her eyes closed, her fingers pressed on his. Are you not going to ask what Dr. Frost told me, Bella? I thought I could trust you to tell me, Jack. Mr. Manningham pulled his hands away. Oh, she heard him rise. It's hopeless. She kept her eyes closed but could tell that he was pacing up and down the room. Utterly hopeless. She lay inert. There was silence in the room, broken only by the rattle of wheels and the clip-clop of a carriage, and four from the street below. Suddenly, Bella felt the sting of a hand against one cheek, then the other, then the first again. She cried out in surprise and agony and opened her eyes. His face was thrust down at hers, white flecks at the edges of his earthworm mouth. You malingering madwoman, he spat in his rage. "That made you open your eyes and sit up, didn't it?" She cowered, thinking he had gone insane, wondering could she escape from the room. But his fist gripped and squeezed her wrists until his jaw shook with effort. Was he at long last going to kill her? She almost wished he would. Anything would be better than her life of horror. "I have been talking to Dr. Frost," he said, "and his instructions are firm. You are to continue to take your medicine religiously. You will get up for luncheon. You will behave yourself in a normal, adult fashion. And you will come to dine and the play this evening." Bella looked at him imploringly. "But Jack, can't you see? How can you suddenly change like this?" He released her suddenly and went to the chimney-piece. "I have no understanding of conditions like yours," he said, or did not until the doctor explained. "There are people who can be killed by kindness, and you are one of them, Bella. Look at your degeneration since this morning at breakfast time, when I misguidedly tried kindness with you. I come back and find you so sunk in lethargy that you will not even open your eyes." "It's not at all like that," cried Bella. "But it is indeed," Manningham said. "That is, if Dr. Frost is to be trusted. And between you and I credit his competence higher than yours, my poor, mad Bella. I have the evidence of my own senses. Dr. Frost has the evidence of the locked wards of lunatic asylums, of wretched creatures saved from self-destruction by the straitjacket, to say nothing of those still more unfortunate who indulge, as you would wish to be, decay into private idiocy, or make away with themselves. I am sorry. You complained of the bitterness of the doctor's physic. But his psychology must be painful too, if we are to avoid the extremity that we dread, none more than you. I really would hate to put you away in an asylum, but if I must, I must. After all, your dear mother died raving." Seeing her husband's face and listening to his words, Bella thought, if either were certifiable, he was more a maniac than she, but he was still the master. Then what must I do? He took from his pocket her fob watch. "I wonder what possessed you to hide this in the pocket of my evening dress waistcoat. Some secret wish to be taken to the theater, perhaps?" He compared its time with his own. "Luncheon will be served within the half hour. I shall expect you downstairs. Would you like the assistance of the undermaid?" "In God's name, no," she said. "I am glad," he said. "Elizabeth has need of her." Bella was utterly without appetite. "Will you please start without me? I will watch you eat, but I have no hunger." "But you must eat," said Manningham. "Your medicine must be taken after meals." Bella, try as she might, was 5 minutes late in the dining room. Jack was waiting for her, talking to Nancy. "Ah," he said, "splendid. In fine trim, considering how vague and disordered we were so recently. Don't you think Madame has made an astonishing recovery, Nancy?" "She looks just like herself again, sir." Nancy blew the lift whistle as a signal to the cook. "I am present," Bella said. "Pardon?" "In polite society," Bella said, "one does not talk about people." She collapsed into her chair. "About people who are present in the third person." Jack sat at the far end of the table. "You must listen to Mrs. Manningham very carefully, Nancy, if you are to better yourself. Mrs. Manningham is a very highly educated lady. She reads Homer in the original Latin. And Virgilius Naso, the nosy one, in Greek. I have always envied her reading and her fine mind. Nancy giggled as she brought over the tureen of soup. She took off the lid, and by the time Nancy had brought the soup plates, Bella had caught its aroma. If that is artichoke soup, Bella said, there is no need for me to tell you that I do not drink it. Manningham ladled out one spoonful, and Nancy passed it to Bella. The artichoke makes one of the most nourishing of soups. You must build yourself up, Dr. Frost said. Artichoke soup appealed to Mr. Manningham. He consumed 3 laterfuls while his wife sipped at her portion of what to her tasted like a tinny poison. If you don't do better than that, my dear, her husband said, I'm afraid that you will vanish quite away. Wouldn't you say, Nancy? Nancy said nothing because she was dispatching the soup below stairs. For the meat course, Jack had ordered a boiled leg of mutton with parsnips, potatoes, and a white onion sauce. It was a dish that she disliked almost as much as artichoke soup. Very little, please. Mr. Manningham sharpened the carving knife on the steel. Then he cut into the middle of the joint. A gap loomed. Would that be enough? He asked. I think it would, without vegetables. He proceeded to cut a thick, fatty slice. No, that is enough, Bella said, as she saw him cutting further. He cut 2 more slices, laid them on her plate, piled high the roots, and passed the plate to Nancy. I can't possibly consume this, Bella said. Mr. Manningham looked up from cutting for himself an equally ample portion. Little girls should eat what is put before them. There followed plum duff, a pudding which made her want to vomit, but of which Jack was fond. On Dr. Frost's behalf, Nancy, he said, if I am abroad for meals, I must ask you to see that Mrs. Manningham eats well. She is growing thin as a bird. Yes, sir. I want you to consider yourself as a sort of nurse, Nancy, till Mrs. Manningham is recovered, that is. I would like to go to my room, Bella said. But of course, Jack answered, when you have taken your medicine. I expect you would like to lie down. He turned to Nancy. Would you give Mrs. Manningham her medicine? Shake the bottle for her? Nancy not only shook the bottle, she poured the medicine into the spoon and was going to feed Bella with it like a baby. I can take it perfectly well by myself, thank you. Grasping the spoon and spilling half of it as she poured it down her throat. It doesn't seem that you can, my dear, Manningham said. Would you pour some more, Nancy? A full dose is prescribed. Bella had already risen, hoping to escape, but Jack was quickly between her and the door. I think Mrs. Manningham would prefer, Jack said to the other maid, who was poised with the spoon ready, if necessary, to force the medicine on the patient, to administer the dose to herself. Bella looked from one of them to the other. This was what she might face in Bedlam. Her gullet was burning with the first half dose. She took the spoon from the maid and tossed the medicine back, went out the door, which her husband involuntarily opened, climbing to the half-landing lavatory, and while the 2 of them were still downstairs, she vomited into the pan. It was horrible. She felt unclean, dizzy, frightened. She pulled up the handle to flush the pan. There was a frosted window to the lavatory door. She thought that they might be waiting outside with spoon and medicine bottle, but she drew back the bolt and opened the door. The door to the dining room was closed. She could hear Jack's voice raised in what sounded like reassurance. She struggled up the stairs as fast as she could. If only she could get to her bedroom and bolt the door. She reached the bedroom, but the keeper of the bolt had been unscrewed. Her privacy had gone. There was no furniture she could move, which Jack could not push aside with the first pressure of a shoulder. Bella looked wildly around the room. She was frightened, more frightened than ever before in her life, with fears as nebulous as those of childhood nightmares, but even more ghastly. She saw the bell pull. If she pulled it gently, there was a faint hope that it would be heard only by Elizabeth in the kitchen, supposing that Jack and Nancy were still in the dining room. There was a hope, perhaps fainter still, that Elizabeth might decide to answer it instead of calling on Nancy, whose domestic duty it was. The bell was operated by a wire which would become taut by depressing the cord. This, if done sharply, set the heavy bell jangling in the kitchen 3-4 floors below. If not done sharply enough, it made no noise at all. Trying to calculate the mean for producing a gentle ring was something only one so desperate as Bella would contemplate, and being so agitated, a desperate woman would be the least qualified to perform it successfully. 3 times she drew the wire taut, and then gave it a short, sharp depression. Then she waited. The action, whether successful or not, had crystallized a resolve. She must at all costs get away from number 13. After all, that is what Jack wanted. If he couldn't drive her to suicide, he wanted to put her away. There was no other explanation for the way he was carrying on. Perhaps he would suddenly kill her. She would go away, seek protection with the Jamiesons, and when she recovered her wits, she could earn her living as a school teacher. If she hadn't the money for the fare, she would raise it somehow. The red beads from the cameo brooch should fetch enough for fare from a jeweler. She shook the vase on the chimney mantel to make sure that they were still there. Of course they were. If Jack had only known about them, she thought grimly, they should have disappeared and then turned up somewhere, such as in his collar box or the glove drawer in the hall. The resolution taken, Bella felt an access of strength. She had only to withdraw until the coast was clear. She was not a prisoner in a cell, but a hermit in seclusion. No one answered the bell. Bella took off her dress and, putting on her dressing gown, lay down on the bed with only the feather down covering her. She was soon asleep. She was wakened by the rapping on the door, and as she opened her eyes, she saw Jack come in. "It is time to be getting dressed." He spoke less like a husband announcing preparations for a pleasure outing than an executioner proclaiming the readiness of the noose. Bella looked at him with different eyes. Having resolved on physical separation, she was already growing apart in spirit. Legally still her husband, Jack would be better served by being rid of her. "Are we losing our hearing again?" Bella did not move, though her body was tense to slip away on the other side of the bed if Jack launched a sudden physical assault. "The cameo brooch," she said quietly. "It is gone." "Gone?" He walked over to her jewel case and lifted out the tray. Then he turned, his expression grave. "This is not a joke, Bella. I cannot impress this on you too strongly." He grasped his left fist in his right and cracked the finger joints. "Pull yourself together. Where is that brooch?" "I don't know. Perhaps you do. Or that little tramp of a maid does, but I don't." "Ask her. She's your confederate, isn't she?" "This is something which I will not tolerate." He made a lunge, but she slipped from the bed to the other side. He glared at her, the veins of his temples thick. "You did this in order to avoid the excursion this evening, didn't you?" He came round to the end of the bed. Bella backed away behind an armchair. Well, my girl, you have succeeded. You will not have to dine at the Criterion or sit in the stalls of the Prince of Wales. But you can have your quiet evening at home, but I warn you that tomorrow morning Dr. Frost will wait upon you with a colleague. You mean you want to put me away? Bella could not really believe that her husband was capable of such cold-bloodedness. I want to do, as always, what is best for you, my girl. As to what that might be, I must be guided by medical practitioners. Meanwhile, I must cancel the reservation and return the tickets. He made for the door. Could you not do that by messenger? But I do not choose to. The fresh air will do me good. You will be back directly, though? I am touched by your solicitude, he answered as he prepared to leave, but I shall possibly visit the club. Witty they may not be, but at least they are not witless. Well, I don't plan to put up with your demented behavior for much longer. One way or another, I shall take action. Chapter 16 was a difficult one to read. I stumbled over a few words. I'm sorry about that, but I just wanted to get through the chapter. It was causing me some really great anxiety. Up until now, we've seen Manningham's manipulation mostly through psychological pressure, through doubt, missing objects, and Bella being made to question her own memory. But in this chapter, the abuse becomes physical and unmistakable. When Manningham strikes Bella, it removes any remaining illusion that this is simply misunderstanding or concern. We see clearly that his control over her has always been deliberate. Bella, however, reaches an important moment here as well. For the first time, she begins actively planning an escape. Her thoughts turn to those red stones and possibly of leaving the house and finding refuge until she can regain her strength. Even though her plan isn't fully formed, and even though we might question some of her choices, it marks a shift. Bella is no longer only reacting to Manningham's control, she's beginning to imagine a way out. And as this chapter ends, the tension rises even further. Manningham tells Bella that Dr. Frost will arrive in the morning with another doctor, raising the terrifying possibility that Bella could be declared insane and confined. The threat hangs over the house as we move into chapter 17. This chapter affected me also. I did not complete this entire diamond painting session, and so we can continue with chapter 17. And I believe that when I do my next diamond painting session, it will be complete, and we will end with chapter 18 and 19. So the thought of this lovely canvas and the book concluding at the same time is making me very happy. So for now, let's begin with chapter 17. Bella stood at the window looking down at the street. On the far side, she noticed a young man wearing a brown bowler hat with a cream silk handkerchief in the breast pocket of his brown worsted jacket and white spats over his brown shoes. He walked slowly up the street, reading a folded copy of the Pink Un in which he appeared immersed. Having covered 30 yards or so, he turned and started to walk back. Suddenly, he stopped and unfolded the newspaper to turn to another page. While he was doing this, Mr. Manningham appeared, crossing the street in the young man's direction. Bella was about to turn away when she noticed that her husband stopped and looked over the newspaper at the young man. The young man awkwardly tried to gather the newspaper in one hand, take off his hat with the other, and answer some questions addressed to him by Mr. Manningham. Then, with a nod of his head, Mr. Manningham strode off, leaving the young man to refold his newspaper. Bella was puzzled until she realized that the young man must be Nancy's beau, Bert Booker, a steady young fellow who was, according to Elizabeth, worth two of her. Bert Booker waited until Mr. Manningham disappeared round the corner. Then he walked briskly across the street and disappeared, hidden from view by the protrusion of the drawing room balcony. Taking off her dressing gown, Bella began to dress. It was Nancy's evening out. She went off duty at 5:30, but while the undermaid was still in the house, Bella could unobtrusively pack. She could check to see how late trains ran to York, but when she did not dare to speak to Elizabeth until Nancy was out of the way. She needed Elizabeth's assistance, especially if she was to take Kerberos with her, and she could not bear to leave the puppy behind. She was just finishing dressing when there was a light tap on the door. It was Elizabeth, earnestly deferential. She came on Nancy's behalf. Could she get off early? Bert Booker was downstairs and wanted to take Nancy out in a quarter of an hour's time. Elizabeth said she could manage. Certainly, Bella said. She may go now if she wants, but as soon as she is gone, I want to have a talk with you. Gladly, madam. As a matter of fact, I wanted to say the same. No sooner had Nancy climbed up the area steps than Elizabeth came bustling up the main stairs, but when she saw Bella's clothes laid ready on the bed for packing, she threw up her hands in dismay. "Whatever are you doing, madam?" "I'm leaving this house directly." Bella's voice trembled. "You must help me, Elizabeth. Mr. Manningham declares that he is calling in that terrible doctor and a consultant. You know what that means. I dare say he has been working on you." The cook nodded. "I am not mad, Elizabeth. I may be awkward, difficult, and frail, but I am not mad. Though God knows the way he has behaved and is behaving would drive a weaker woman out of her mind. And now he's won that Nancy over. After all I did for her. Have you noticed how that child has changed?" Elizabeth was doubly distressed, unable to see how she could help her mistress and Bert Booker's employer, whom she had promised to assist after visiting him. "Where will you go, madam?" "I have where to go," Bella said. "If you do not know where, then Mr. Manningham cannot worm it out of you." She went to the chimney mantel and took the red stones out of the vase. "What I lack is the money. There is a pawn shop in Westbourne Grove. These stones are pretty. They should advance you £10 on them, if not take 5. Will you go for me?" Elizabeth refused to take the stones. "There is no call, madam. I have the money in my savings. Besides—" She did not finish because at that moment came the thump of the heavy knocker on the front door, a sound for which Elizabeth had been waiting. "What is that? It cannot be Mr. Manningham returned." Bella slipped the stones into her purse. "It's the gentleman," Elizabeth said. "What I wanted to talk to you about. I beg you, go down to the drawing room to receive him." "At such a time," Bella said, "when every moment is precious. It is impossible." Elizabeth took her mistress's hand. "But you must, madam," she said. "From the way he spoke with me, I do believe he can help you, madam, more than ever what I can. He is a friend, a real friend." It was the word friend, as much as Elizabeth's earnestness, that made Bella agree. As she tidied herself in the looking-glass before descending, she thought, a real friend was exactly what she wanted at this moment. Someone as benevolent as Mrs. Jamieson, but ready to take her side. The gentleman was already waiting in the drawing room, looking down at Jack's bureau, idly testing the drawers. With a shock, not of a surprise, but of pleasure, Bella recognized that the gentleman was not an utter stranger. She had seen him that first evening standing in the street outside, and later he had tried to speak to her outside of Whiteley's. "Mrs. Manningham," Elizabeth said. "This is Mr. Ruff." The gentleman looked up, a short, sturdy figure with grizzled hair, probably in his late 60s. He combined the vigor of a much younger man with an authority which was reassuring and a friendliness that could, Bella thought, be on occasion grimly firm. She was surprised that she could ever have regarded Mr. Ruff as an alarming person. She turned to Elizabeth and nodded to indicate that she might leave. Then she went over to meet Mr. Ruff, who shook her hand. What may I do for you, Mr. Ruff? It is rather a question of what we can do for one another, Mrs. Manningham. I understand from Elizabeth that you intended to leave this house tonight. I must. A very wise decision, Mrs. Manningham, in the light of all you know at the moment. But in the light of what I know at the moment, well, shall we sit down? Have we the time? I talk faster sitting down, Mrs. Manningham. You stand if you wish. It's just that I am afraid, Mr. Ruff. Bella sat across the hearth from him. So many things have happened in this house that I do not properly understand. You speak even truer than you think, madam. Mr. Ruff looked around. This room has not changed much in the last 20 years. Except the carpet, of course. 20 years ago, I suppose you wouldn't recall a Mrs. Alice Barlow in the late 60s? The cabman's friend, they called her. Very eccentric, very rich. Wasn't a thing she wouldn't do for cabbies or their horses. I fail to see what this has to do with us, Mr. Ruff. Not if I told you that the last, indeed the only time I saw the old lady, she was lying there. He pointed to the floor between them. A shade nearer to my chair than yours, ma'am. Her throat was slit from ear to ear. Bella was appalled. Those noises upstairs. You would not have me think this house is haunted. That I would not, Mrs. Manningham. Those noises were no spirit rappings. But they are connected with the unsolved murder of Alice Barlow. I'd bet my last pound, and I shall tell you why. Are you a policeman? Bella asked. Were you in charge of the case? Not exactly either, Mr. Ruff said. Before retirement, I was Detective Sergeant Ruff, a name no doubt unknown to you, ma'am, but respected, indeed feared by the criminal fraternity. I was not the detective in charge of the Barlow case. If I had been, I can assure you, it would not have been dropped until it had been solved. To murder a harmless old lady, what could be the motive? Money, ma'am, or more specifically, the famous Barlow rubies which she inherited from her husband. You should have seen the upstairs. She slept on that top floor, had all the servants' rooms knocked into a big sort of attic studio bedroom. She was eccentric, like I said. And this place, like a shambles it was, chairs ripped up, feathers all over the place, furniture smashed. It was where she kept the Barlow rubies, see? It was an open secret. That's where the murderer went after he slit the old lady's throat. Up top to get the rubies. And he got them? That's what my superior officer, Sergeant Allinson, believed, or rather said he believed. He said the job was done by Smith, the slasher, who, you may remember, swung a couple of years later for the Trowbridge diamond murder. The slasher was a pro. Took his swag to a fence to be recut. And that's what Allison said was done with Barlow rubies. He never got the slasher to confess, but the story allayed the public outcry and saved Sergeant Allison's face. And you believe the murderer never found the rubies? Sure of it, Mr. Ruff said. And he wasn't a pro like the slasher. You could see from the way the place was smashed up. Lost his head. You can imagine him searching all night, getting wilder and wilder, knowing there was a deaf old servant down in the basement who'd be getting up as soon as it was light. I don't think he wanted to do the maid, too. The old lady must have shaken him. Mrs. Manningham leaned forward in her chair, for the moment oblivious of the passage of time, which brought her husband's return nearer. Do you know who this amateur murderer was, Mr. Ruff? I'd bet a pound to a penny, Mr. Ruff said, that it was a young party named Sidney Power. Sidney Power was a personable young man, distant cousin of the old lady, very plausible. He used to help her administer her charities. Secretary of the Cabman's Shelter Endowment Trust, I remember he was. I did some investigation of him, and a tricky bit of work I found him. Very fond of ladies, and very successful. But there were things at which he was not so successful. In fact, at the time of the old lady's death, he was up to the eyes and over in debt, and he had motive too. He inherited £10,000 under the old lady's will, but he had a cast-iron alibi. He'd spent the night in the bed of a fancy lady in Half Moon Street, and she swore, and so did her maid, who slept in the sitting room outside. If that was his motive, why should he want to steal the rubies? Bella asked. It doesn't seem to make sense. Mr. Ruff laughed. You have a detective mind, ma'am, or a mind like Sergeant Allison's, because that's what he said. But it occurred to me that young Sidney Power was one of these clever fellows who likes to have things all ways. By stealing the rubies, he would draw suspicion away from himself. As a legatee, for those of you who did not know what a legatee was, I was a legatee, Legatee, is a person who receives something specific from a will. As it was, he benefited to the tune of a further £3,000, his share of the £12,000, which was the insurance company had to fork out when the rubies could not be found. And what happened to Mr. Power? Where is he now? That is the question, ma'am. Or rather, two questions, of which I can only answer the first. The year after the old lady's murder, Sidney Power emigrated to Australia. I had an eye kept on him. On the boat going out, he announced that he was hoping to strike gold, and so he did, in a manner of speaking, but not by pick and shovel. In 1871, he married a Mrs. Dusty Hogg, the widow of an ex-convict who had struck it rich in the Ballarat gold rush. She had, I understand, in her maiden days been a fan dancer. Some 4 years later, Mr. Power disappeared, taking with him some of his wife's fortune, but not sufficient to induce her to prefer charges. According to my report, she said, to be rid of that rogue, I'd pay twice as much. And from that moment, Sidney Power may be said to have vanished from the face of the earth, certainly from my records. Bella looked at her watch. Mr. Ruff, my husband. But with the imperturbability of the old, Mr. Ruff was not to be hurried. Now to your second question, ma'am. I have by training and by nature a good memory, not merely for faces, which change with time and can be disguised by the growth of a beard and a mustache, but also for mannerisms, bearing what I might call the stamp of personality. The stamp does not change, Mrs. Manningham, any more than the Queen's head upon a coin may change. It can be worn away, perhaps finally almost obliterated, but it does not change. Mr. Ruff, Bella said, please come to your point. As you know, ma'am, Mr. Ruff continued, I live in the neighborhood, close by. Well, one day, some months ago, I was taking my constitutional when I noticed in front of me a man whose bearing was familiar. He was not a Bayswater inhabitant whom, of course, I would have recognized immediately from behind, but someone whom I was sure I had met. I followed him down Westbourne Grove. Even in retirement, one retains one's professional curiosity. Bella could not contain her impatience. It was approaching dusk. The old man might go on all night. Finally, what did he do but turn into Angel Street? He walked up the steps of this very house. Bella knew what the old man was leading up to, but she could not bear to cut him short. She went over to the window. The gas lamps had been lit, but there was a group of children still playing hopscotch on the pavement opposite. As I walked past without so much as batting an eyelid, Mr. Ruff continued, I said to myself, in the name of all that's unholy, it's Sydney power. He looked at Mrs. Manningham's unresponsive back. Did you hear me, ma'am? Mrs. Manningham turned. God help you, Mr. Ruff. Her voice trembled. Whoever my husband is, he's coming down the street. Chapter. My diamond painting stopped right on cue, but boy, oh boy, what a chapter. Up until this point in Gaslight, the story has kept Bella trapped in uncertainty. We have watched her doubt herself, question her memory, live under the terrifying possibility that she might be losing her mind. But we begin to see some truth finally begin to surface in chapter 17. Bella, looking out her bedroom window, and notices a young man standing outside. He's dressed in a brown bowler, the brown worsted jacket, the white spats over his shoes. That young man turns out to be Bert Booker, who is waiting for Nancy because the two of them have plans to go out. This moment becomes incredibly important because once Nancy leaves, Bella begins to put her plans into motion. She needs Elizabeth. She asks her to come back. She wants to talk to her, and Elizabeth says, I need to talk to you too. And when Elizabeth comes back upstairs, she sees that Bella is packing a bag, and she reveals to her what she intends to do. She's leaving the house. She's not mad. She's not insane. He's coming back with a doctor and a colleague. They're going to put me away. I'm not crazy. She wants Elizabeth's help cashing in the red stones, and she wants Kerberos with her so she can escape long enough to regain her strength. Bella believes, and rightly so, the only way is to get out of this house. The only way to survive is to get out of this house. But Elizabeth needs to talk to her, and she's trying to stop her. She tells Bella that she doesn't need to pawn the rubies. Elizabeth even offers to give her the money herself. But something more important than the generous offer and the help that she's willing to give to Bella is there is someone that she insists that she must speak to first. A friend. A real friend. Sergeant Ruff is waiting in Manningham's office, would you say? Because he's looking through his bureau and he's checking the drawers. But with Elizabeth pleading, Bella agrees to meet with him. I love Sergeant Ruff. What follows is one of the most important revelations of the entire story. I love that he's not concerned with time. He's not concerned with Manningham coming back. He explains that the strange noises in the house are not supernatural and that Bella is not losing her mind. And this is after when he tells her about a murder that happened, what was it, like 20 years before? Right there at 13 Angel Street. And he knows the room, and he says, it hasn't changed much. A wealthy woman named Alice Barlow was murdered in the house for her rubies, not far from where they were standing. And in this mad rage, looking for these rubies, they were never recovered. And it wasn't the slasher, right? Because it didn't have the characteristics of the slasher, but I guess, to appease the public, the slasher was fingered for this murder. Alice Barlow had a nephew, Sidney Power, and he inherited money from her estate. He inherited money from the insurance company, and he also disappeared with the rubies. Immigrating to Australia and eventually marrying a woman who was an ex-fan dancer, but now a widow married to an ex-convict, connected to the Ballarat gold rush. Made some coin, made more than a little coin. Sergeant Ruff never took his eyes off of Sidney Power. He lost track of him after he ran off with some of, what was her name? I can't remember her first name. Her last name was Hogg, the fan dancer. So he makes off with some of her money, and she doesn't care. She's like, I would have gave it all to him to get rid of that rogue. And he disappears. I guess this is where he was like in the Amazon, maybe. But Rogue, even as a retired police officer, detective, he is not convinced that we ever had the right man. And he tells Bella something. He says, people grow old, they change, they can hide their face under a beard and a mustache like Manningham is doing. But their mannerisms never change. That's something you could always count on. Appearances can change, mannerisms do not. And so while he is out for his walk, he sees a man walking down the street, and he knows he's not a local. He would have known him right away. But there's something about him that seemed familiar. So he follows him. And that man walks straight into 13 Angel Street. And I love that he says, I have to go back to the book because I love the way he says it. The way he says it. I already clipped the page for the next 2 chapters. I try not to look. I don't want to look. I don't want to see anything. He says, oh my gosh. And as he walked past me without so much as batting an eyelid, as I walked by him, Mr. Ruff continued, I said to myself, in the name of all that's unholy, it's Sidney Power. And she's unresponsive. And she says, God help you. Whoever my husband really is, he's coming down the street. So, the realization struck him immediately watching this man walk into 13 Angel Street that the man he saw was not simply Jack Manningham. He believes Bella's husband is Sidney Power and is the man suspected of murdering his own aunt, Alice Barlow. So Bella, Bella's intuition was right. He would kill her. He would kill her. Bella has been living with a murderer. And the chapter, the way that it ended, I'm telling you, I'm such a fan of Patrick Hamilton and William Drummond's writing. The chapter ends at this most terrifying moment. He's telling her, your husband may not be who you think he is. He's a murderer. But Bella is looking out the window and she sees Manningham walking down the street. Oh, I just love this chapter. It's so powerful because the story has fully reversed perspective. Because we have been in a state where is Bella losing her mind? What are these noises upstairs? Is she misplacing things? Now it's like, who is Jack Manningham really? The truth that Bella feared she would never be believed about is finally beginning to surface. But the danger, oh my God, the danger has never been greater. Because the man that Sergeant Ruff suspects is a murderer and suspects of murder is walking back into the house. Oh my God. I mean, we never really know people, right? We never really know people. I was watching Queen of Diamonds today while I was diamond painting. While I was diamond painting, I was listening to Queen of Diamonds. I was listening to Jenna. And she was saying that she's hooked on a podcast. And it's called Murder. Wait, what's it called? Murder with My Husband. Murder with My Husband. So the wife loves murder mysteries. And the husband doesn't. But he joins his wife in the podcast and she tells him about these stories. And he sits there. He doesn't know anything about it. It's not scripted. It's his first reaction. And it's a really cute podcast. I really, really like them both. Thank you, Jenna. Thank you, Queen of Diamonds, for telling me about this, because I'm hooked, right? And so John and I took a drive out to Lansdowne this afternoon, and I was telling him all about the podcast and this couple, how they sit in, and I'm telling him about the book and where we are, and he had some great insight. I'm like, oh my God, you and I know you're not reading this book along with me, but I'm keeping you up to speed. You have to sit in with me, because John makes such great he makes some great revelations. And so get back to Murder with My Husband. She was talking about, and I remember this case, she was talking about the very young 16-year-olds who met in, I believe, Naples, Florida, right? They're both on vacation. And they meet and they fall in love, but it's a long distance romance. They're young, they're all full of emotion. They're keeping in touch with one another, but they both have problems. She has a problem with an eating disorder, and he has a problem with depression. And the mystery was, well, maybe you'll want it. Maybe you'll want to listen to it. But the point that I was making, bringing this up, is not just because it's a great podcast. It was the realization that we never really know anybody, right? I worked with someone. It was one of my first jobs. I worked at Sidney Hillman Medical Center at 22nd and Chestnut in Philadelphia. It was the Tailor and Seamstress Union, which both my grandparents and my Aunt Mary, who just passed away, were members of, because, we Italians, when we immigrated to this country, most of us were tailors and seamstresses. My father's mother worked for Stetson, and my grandmother opened up her own dry cleaning business. My aunt worked for after 8 formal wear. So, and one day, the police came in and arrested the guy in the basement where we were. We were in the medical records department, which was downstairs too. And he got caught. He got caught because he had just applied for his Social Security, and they found him. He murdered his wife. Like, you never know who you just don't know. It's really scary. And I'm thinking of Bella, and I'm thinking of her like, oh my God, you've been living with a murderer. Like, he either wanted to drive you mad, but why? Like, I just don't understand why. Why are you trying to get your wife out of the way in this house so that you could look for these rubies? Like, what are you well, why drive her crazy? So there's got to be more to this. There has to be more. There has to be more, because she's not gonna care about what he's doing. Am I missing something? I get everything kind of confused, so I have to write everything down. So, with that revelation hanging in the air, we now have only 2 chapters left in Gaslight. I didn't finish my diamond painting. And just a little more diamond painting before Golden Christmas canvas is complete. And just 2 short chapters. Let me see. I'm not going to look at anything because I like to read along with you guys. And Foofy is outside the door crying because he hasn't seen me most of the day. So chapter 18 book begins with page 209 and the book ends on page 224. I'm going to let my cat in the room. I will see you as always in the next one. I'm going to leave you guys with some music. Now, if you follow me for Self-Care Sunday, you're going to see this diamond painting again because I don't have time to diamond paint again and do a Self-Care Sunday. I could leave just the end of this half hour as Self-Care Sunday because I've been making them very quick. So if you skip the music, you'll see for Self-Care Sunday. Have a good one. Thank you for hanging with me. And I will see you tomorrow for Self-Care Sunday. Bye.